Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, more threats from Iran of possible new attacks against Israel if it begins a ground invasion of Gaza. Those threats coming as the White House announces President Biden will visit Israel Wednesday and meet other top Middle Eastern leaders. We'll have a look at these important developments from Jerusalem. A close-up look at the horrors brought about by Hamas. We're going to take you to what was once a peaceful Israeli farming community before Hamas brutally attacked it, murdering the people there. And hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists have been called up to fight. We're going to see what it's like to go from civilian to soldier and be prepared for war. All those stories and more ahead today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour in Israel, where once again Iran is threatening that Israel's war with Hamas could spread and lead to more battles against the deadly force of Hezbollah. Those warnings coming as the White House announced President Joe Biden plans to visit Israel Wednesday. As Chris Mitchell reports, it's part of the high-stakes brinkmanship between Israel, the U.S., and Iran.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken explained one of the main reasons for the president's visit.
President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't. To that end, he's deployed 2 aircraft carrier groups and other military assets to the region.
According to the Pentagon, about 2,000 U.S. troops may be deployed to the region to support Israel in intelligence and medical roles, should Israel launch a ground incursion into Gaza. Iran's foreign minister warned of a preemptive attack if Israel begins a ground invasion of Gaza and said time is running out.
If the limited and extremely tight windows of opportunity available to the United Nations and political actors are not used over the coming hours, opening new fronts against the Zionist regime is inevitable.
The IDF tells CBN News Iranian-backed Hezbollah is slowly escalating the situation on the northern border.
So there's the threat of that being, of the border heating up even further. Speaking to a friend of mine who was unable to come to work today because she was up until 6 o'clock in the morning. She lives in the north next to an artillery battery, and she was up until 6 o'clock with regular artillery fire into Lebanon. Things are hot and getting hotter.
Security expert Ari Sasha says Hezbollah presents a much more formidable military challenge than Hamas.
Hamas is the equivalent of AAA ball, the Toledo Mud Hens, and they're a good team. But Hezbollah is the Boston Red Sox. They're major league. They're near peer, I would call them.
This as new atrocities are emerging from the Hamas attacks on Israeli civilians. Israel's foreign ministry released this footage of an autopsy of people burned to death by Hamas.
I'm 31 years a forensic pathologist. I'm used to see dead people, but I never saw people that are conjoined together while they are burned, trying to hug each other. I'm sorry.
Hamas released this footage of a 21-year-old Israeli hostage kidnapped from Sderot. The IDF now says the total number of hostages is 199. On the Gaza border, Special Ops Sergeant Major Doron Kadar, fresh from the front lines, told CBN News this has unified all Israelis.
What I can tell you is what this has done, it has united all of us across the board, whatever our political agendas were before this broke out. We are all coming together. The Air Force, the ground forces, the Navy, everybody is coming, and we're ready to do our part to defend our country and to stand shoulder to shoulder.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now. So, Chris, Iran is issuing these threats to Israel. Is Israel taking the threat seriously?
Efrem, yeah, they take this threats very seriously from Iran. And one thing you have to remember is for Iran, this is a bit of a complicated situation as well. Probably what, just a few weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that Israel, the U.S., and Saudi Arabia were going to have a peace deal. So many people believe that this was an attempt to take that peace deal off the table, which they have, certainly for now. And so, but they also have two major cards, proxy groups. One is Hamas and the other is Hezbollah. And certainly they feel like maybe Hamas may be decimated by Israel, but do they want to play that other major card, which is Hezbollah on the northern border? And if both of them do get into the fray and or defeated by perhaps a U.S. and Israel combined force, then they need to decide whether or not they want to play that card right now. There's a lot of brinkmanship going on. Iran has a lot involved, and so does the U.S. and Israel. All of that playing out right now in real time.
Let's talk more about the possible action by Hezbollah. The Israeli military said in your story that Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran, is a much bigger threat than Hamas. Tell us more about that.
Well, some people estimate it's like 10 times the strength of Hamas. You know, if you go back in history, Ephraim, if you go back to the 2006 Second Lebanon War, there was a UN resolution 1701 that was supposed to demilitarize the southern Lebanon, and only the government of Lebanon and the army of Lebanon could go in there. So instead, that didn't work. And UNIFIL, which is the UN peacekeeping force, didn't work. So instead of having maybe 14,000 rockets that they had in 2006, and 4,000 of them were used in a 34-day war that shut down northern Israel, now they have maybe 150, 200,000 rockets. They have multiple Jeeps and RPGs and rocket launchers, much more than Hamas. So it's a very formidable force, and that really makes Israel be prepared. And that's what I've been hearing, Ephraim. They are deployed on the northern border. I talked to an IDF spokesman earlier, and I would say, you know, since the 2006 war, we have heard over and over again from IDF generals and officials and political officials that if Lebanon gets into the war, if Hezbollah gets in the war, they're going to make Lebanon bomb it back to the Stone Age.
What are Israel's expectations for this visit from President Biden?
Well, it presents a unified front for the United States and Israel. And I was talking to, you know, a Lebanese citizen not too long ago, and he says Iran probably didn't expect the strength of the United States response. They have two carrier groups, one in the region, one on its way, and that really presents Iran with a decision and a challenge. So I think Israel likes the fact that the United States and Joe Biden are coming here to show a unified force against Iran, and reiterating that statement by the president, don't do it. That is to Hezbollah in Iran.
Is there any concern that our president's visit will hold up the Israeli invasion of Gaza?
That's the other side of the coin, Ephraim. A lot of people think that maybe the U.S. is trying to prevent any incursion into Gaza, and certainly any war with Hezbollah. And you know, some people think there's such a groundswell of support right now for what the IDF will do. Yesterday in our report, we had the deputy mayor of Sderot say, game over. This is not going to happen anymore. We cannot tolerate the kind of rockets and the kind of terror attacks we've had on October 7th. So the sense in here in Israel is they got to take care of Hamas.
All right, our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Chris. I want to turn now to our CBN News White House correspondent Abigail Robertson. So, Abigail, what is the administration's goal for this president's trip to Israel?
Well, Ephraim, President Biden wants to travel to Israel to show that the United States is firmly behind Israel in this conflict, supports Israel, and will continue to do so. And he wants to send a message, as Chris was just saying, to others in the region, like Hezbollah and Iran, to not escalate this conflict. And the IDF has said that the U.S. has sent unprecedented support since this attack has happened. As Chris mentioned, those warships, they've fighter jets are providing satellite images to help Israel, and weapons as Israel prepares for the next phase of this crisis.
Is the White House concerned about the war with Hamas widening out with other countries in the Middle East getting involved?
Definitely. And that's why President Biden feels strongly that he physically goes to Israel, meets with these leaders. That's why Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been in the region for a week, meeting with leaders of the various countries involved in this. And they want to send a message to not make this a bigger conflict and that the United States will stand firmly behind Israel as things continue.
Abby, the president is going to Jordan to meet with King Abdullah, along with Egyptian President el-Sisi and Palestinian President Abbas. Why will he be talking to them as well?
Well, the main thing he'll be discussing is aid for those in Gaza right now, discussing what they need and how the United States can help in those humanitarian efforts. Excuse me, just checking the notes from the White House here. Another thing is Biden's going to reiterate that he does not believe that Hamas stands for the Palestinian people and that the United States is willing to provide humanitarian aid as those people are fleeing their homes and in a pretty desperate situation.
Is the president also trying to show that he supports a Palestinian state here?
Yes, and he even reiterated that in an interview just this week on 60 Minutes, that he does support a Palestinian state, and I believe he will speak to that in these meetings this week.
Thank you so much. Our CBN News White House correspondent, Abigail Robertson, thank you so much for your reporting. Coming up, more about the horrors inflicted by Hamas. We're going to give you a first-hand look at Hamas's destruction of a peaceful farming community in Israel. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Over the weekend, CBN News gained access to one of the Israeli communities targeted by Hamas in one of its first attacks from Gaza. CBN's Chuck Holton went to see firsthand the destruction of this once peaceful farming community.
Children's toys lie scattered in the midst of shell casings and burned-out cars. The smell of death lingers in the air, a pungent reminder of the hellish attack just over a week ago. Colonel Golan Vash gave a tour of the village, describing what he found when his team first arrived, only hours after the area had been retaken from the terrorists.
We found a family outside, exactly where you're standing right now. But it was only the beginning of what we saw inside. In this corner of this living room, we find a concentration of 8 babies burned among 15 other people.
They came in here and slaughtered about 10% of the residents of this kibbutz. These are children, old people, and you can just see the incredible destruction that was wrought here. And the last terrorist was cleared out of this kibbutz a week after the initial attack. So their plan was to use it as a bargaining chip and to take everyone hostage here. Instead, they got an incredible battle as soldiers from the IDF came in and killed all of the terrorists.
I think that some of the terrorist group come hiding in the houses, for example here, wait silently in a high readiness for 12 hours or 16 hours, and then they get up. So every time that we saw that we cleaned the area and everything was silent, suddenly another 12 or another 20 got out. Yeah.
When the village was finally cleared, rescuers turned to recovery, and what they found will stay with them for the rest of their lives.
I found a mother lying, protecting her baby, and she was shot in the back, and the baby was beheaded.
You've been all over the world. You respond to rescues and crises. Describe how this compares to what you've seen around the world.
Nothing compared to that. If we needed anything to convince us, we cannot use the same democratic tools that the world use. It's not the human rights that you in your mind think of. Right now, there is no place for feeling. We are professionals. We need to achieve our goals, and our goal is to ensure that the Hamas organization is no longer exist.
This is what we're talking about here. You see these pictures of people with their babies, their children, that just wanted to live a peaceful life. And on the 7th of October, that peace was shattered. And now their home looks like this.
All this region, we must clear from this kind of threat if we want to provide our citizens the security, the protection that we could not give them last Saturday.
The battle to retake Be'eri may be over, but the war is just beginning. And as these IDF troops marshal their forces within sight of the massacre, every one of them knows exactly what they're fighting for. From southern Israel, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Still ahead, after Hamas's devastating terrorist attacks, Israel launched the biggest call-up of reservists in history. We're going to see what it's like to go from civilian to soldier in an instant and be prepared for war. That story is right after this. It's the largest military call-up in the history of Israel, the government mobilizing more than 360,000 reservists in response to the Hamas terrorist attacks, the number amounting to 4% of Israel's population. CBN national security correspondent Caitlin Burke looks at what that means for those who find themselves suddenly in the Israeli military.
Within the Israeli Defense Force, it's known as the shift, going from 0 to 100, from civilian life to war, in an instant.
The sea can be calm and easy and nice, but within minutes, you can get to a storm.
Arad Levertov is a reserve officer in Israel's most elite special forces unit, Shayetet 13. In 2006, he returned to combat for the Lebanon War, leaving behind his pregnant wife and a successful career to join his unit on the front lines.
I knew that my team was focused on the north side of Israel, and within hours, you leave everything. You say, you give a kiss goodbye, and you go to the war.
Now, a new generation of warriors answer the call, some responding immediately from their homes in Israel.
Within hours, the Shayetet had troops of reserve fighting against terrorists. Within hours, I'm talking about still Saturday, midday. Think about it. They left the life, they came to the base, they got the gear, they took a helicopter and went to fight.
Others returning as quickly as possible from abroad.
I jumped on the first plane I could and I came here. It's not easy to leave the family behind, especially because they are in the US. So it's not easy. But I feel that it's necessary.
Levertov now serves on the board of an organization known as AFINS, American Friends of Israel Navy SEALs. Since the attacks took place, they've raised more than $1 million to support Shayetet 13 units and their families. Their sister organization in Israel, the Atalef Foundation, spreads those funds where needed, from supplying equipment to help the influx of soldiers to providing housing and childcare to the families left behind. Levertov says these groups will also be there when the war is over.
There's going to be a lot of PTSD of this, right? I mean, people see something that you never even imagine and don't wish to your enemies to see. And that Aleph specifically has a lot of programs to support PTSD, not only for the Shayetet, but for the entire IDF.
For now, the focus is on the battle ahead, and Levertov says each soldier fighting is clear on their mission.
And the mission, as I mentioned, is to fight terror and to get that we can live in security in Israel, but not only in Israel, around the world.
All Israelis must serve in the military when they turn 18, men for 32 months, women for 24. After that, most can be called up to reserve duty until the age of 40, or older in the case of a national emergency. Levertov says after the Hamas attacks, 150% of the number called up responded to serve, everyone eager to do what they can to serve their country. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, a beautiful sight in the skies over the weekend. We're going to bring you a look at a special type of eclipse. We've got that story for you when we come back. Stay with us.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning, the CBN News Quick Start Podcast. Each weekday morning at 7 a.m., get quick highlights of the day's important news. Then an in-depth analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Insights that matter to people of faith. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Find the CBN News Quick Start Podcast on iTunes or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, because truth matters. Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel Live. CBN News, because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
Finally today, in case you missed it over the weekend, a rare spectacle dazzling the sky gazers across the Americas. The moon passing in front of the sun on Saturday, creating an annular solar eclipse. The eclipse darkened skies, leaving a blazing border around the sun and creating this so-called ring of fire visible to millions of people. The next ring of fire eclipse visible from America's skies won't be until the year 2039. Oh, that is time for your Tuesday Tweetable, and today I'd like to pass along this message I pray will bless you, and you will post-tag tweet and share it with those in your circles of influence. Feelings are real, but they aren't reality. Don't resist what you feel it, but then reject it if it doesn't measure up to God's reality on the matter. With that word, make this a terrific Tuesday, regardless of how you are feeling. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you that you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can also find them online anytime. That is cbnnews.com. We love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can do that by emailing us. That address is newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching today. Join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.